So this is the form for feedback on the cultural heart. The public can have their say and their opinion on the cultural heart, right? Which the form is quite difficult to find if you type it in on the internet and look for the cultural heart. And go into the Kirklees Council website and go into the cultural heart page. It only shows the development plans. Unless you get to the specific page that opens this form, it's actually quite hard to find this form. I only found it because a few councillors posted it. To start with, these questions are what the council are asking you. When it says that, you know, you can give an opinion, or they're asking for an opinion on what you think to the town centre, you think that you're going to have a say and some input in what you think to the design plans and whether you like them or not. When it actually turns out that they are the ones making the questions up. So they're only creating the questions that suit the council. It's actually more like a survey. It's just a survey, and with the survey, they're actually creating all the questions and limiting the answers to what you can have this answer, you can have that answer, which is like what they're doing on YouTube and Facebook. It's like on YouTube and Facebook, you're limited to, it's like you can actually give a statement and an opinion. They just want to give suggestions that they think you should say this or they think you should say that, and they want you to complete it, and it actually is shaped and conformed to what they want to use it for, which is, you know, half of this is if you're going to go to town, less or more. They're actually, in a way, they're actually wanting to stop people going to town. And they're wanting to control certain. They want to attract certain people towards town and deter other sort of people going from town. So in a way, it's kind of irrelevant whether you put whether. I mean, what does this mean? Will you go to town more often or not? If we build this cultural hub, right? It's just a number, a statistic. You know, if they don't even know what sort of people are going to come and aren't. If they do the survey and then more people won't come to town, they could use that to their advantage and say, oh, right, well, you know, we're stopping loads of idiots coming to town. It's one of those questionnaires where it doesn't matter what the answers come in as, because they'll use the answers in a way that suits them, however they pose the question. If they say, oh, we've got rid of loads of idiots from town, there's going to be less idiots and only people who are going to, you know, be productive or cultural, then they'll say, oh yeah, look at these results, you know, we've got rid of idiots and we're only going to have cultural, interesting people in town. But then if everyone says, oh, we're going to come to town more, then they go, oh, everybody's want to come to town, they think the plans are brilliant, we can build it. It's sort of like one of those questionnaires. And also, the way this form is created, look at this. On the mobile app, right, it says strongly support, and you scroll down these questions. It's hard to notice for someone who's not familiar with phones that it scrolls to the side and it's got this strongly oppose here. You can actually go back on the form. You know, how often are you going to visit town? It is like on Facebook when they say, you know, oh, I don't want to see any more video suggestions like this anymore. And they ask you why. Because it's inappropriate, repetitive, or irrelevant. You know, what information does that really give them? It doesn't even really tell them anything much. There's more and more incentive now where Facebook and YouTube, if you raise a civil claim, if you want to raise either a civil claim or actually a legal claim through Facebook, they have community guidelines and they have community standards. But whenever you get an issue raised, all you can do is press an appeal button and get it looked at. You can't actually input any writing in the legal process. Particularly in the civil procedure rules, it says that you've got to try and resolve the problem out of court. Now, each party needs to be able to give a statement straight away, right? But they don't actually facilitate you giving a statement straight away on Facebook and YouTube. You just, like, click from a selection of options that they choose what the options are, and all the time, they're not even adequate for what you want to say or what the issue is, and you can't describe it. They're trying to make it so they choose the answers, they choose the questions. It's not proper procedure rules in well-established law. And these are big corporate platforms now that are forcing these procedures on you, forcing these fundamental platforms, and they've got an enforcement power behind it. And there's not really much you can do about it. Police don't usually want to get involved with social media now, even if you've been discriminated against, unless it's sexual or racial, and then they're interested. But if it's political, or if it's just your free speech and opinion, when you've still got discrimination laws, they really don't want to get involved. And half of the time, if someone blocks you, how could you even lay documents on them if you wanted to take them to court for discrimination? You can't get in touch with them. I mean, even if the police won't bother, even if your solicitor wanted to try contact them and then they blocked you, then the solicitor would have to contact Facebook, and apparently it takes ages, and Facebook can't always guarantee to reply. It's like the proper due process has been hijacked, and all these corporate places, particularly the council, are hijacking the right for you to ask your questions, what you want to ask, and require answers, and to actually give information and fill it in, put points that you want to put through the platforms. It all seems, you see, it's not presented, before you open this form, it's not presented as, Kirklees Council are doing a survey. Will you participate in a survey of the cultural quarter? Because that's what this is. They present it as, we're planning a cultural quarter, have your say. To say have your say means to speak your mind, to tell them what you think about it and the designs, or to even say what ideas you think it should be. This is not having your say as they would lead you to believe have your say. This is, we've got a form with questions that we want to ask you. It's like, we've got questions and we want you to tick our boxes. It's like you going around and doing a petition. It's not, we're petitioning for this or that, and we want you to come and tick our boxes. It's not like you're saying, I want this or that, and I want to have my say in it, and you come, these are my opinions, and then you tell me what you think to it. It's the other way around. And also, I think the thing about this town centre project is Huddersfield is a beautiful place. It is a very intricate and unique landscape. It's got all these tiered forest areas around it, like these raised platforms with these tiered forest areas that are all sort of surrounding and around Huddersfield. And none of the new town centre ideas or designs really emphasise or represent that or symbolise it or embody the landscape of Huddersfield. In fact, most of the new big buildings block off and obstruct the visual access to Castle Hill, or celebrate what Castle Hill is. One of the university buildings is loosely based on Castle Hill, but it starts small at the bottom and goes big up to the top, which is not small roots, actually. It's not big roots and foundations at the bottom of it. And it's more sort of like that Warrior's Tomb place that's got turned over and tipped upside down, actually. And that Warrior's Tomb place, it is without a doubt one of the Brigantes. It is a Brigantes headquarters because it's the right distance from Castle Hill and the right shape and size. And in that old Alex Hogg map with a D over West Riding and West Yorkshire, he's put a letter D over it, and then later on, after King George established the Imperial Chemical Industries in 1954, this was a Liberal stronghold, and then Labour got in for a short term for 1 term, and then they ended up building that street on the top, which is a letter D, which is a Liberty Cap shaped hill. It's a Liberty Cap shaped hill, and they put a letter D on it, which looks like a dunce hat. It's a dunce, a Liberty shape with a letter D on it. So it is sort of a joke on our area. And in the town centre had a lot of very old pubs, old-fashioned pubs, which were the original old buildings, the identity of this town. All Liberal headquarters, all the old Liberal meeting places, like where Ramsden would go and the other people to have their meetings. This was heavily Liberal area. And all the plaques and all the people and all the history all the history and all the plaques from around that area, and all the figures of history, the liberal figures, and also the information about the Civil War would have been in those buildings on the walls, and they've all been pulled out and knocked down. And then it gradually, the Labour Party was formed, and then they gradually, from the Industrial Revolution that actually started in Shropshire, in Telford, they've actually transformed our area into a workers' area, a servants' area, the serving working class. They built into that. They made into a workers' class area with they actually promised agriculture when they had the Yorkshire Show at Dalton. They promised agriculture. But instead of growing plants and lots of nutritious leafy greens that now the doctors are telling us we should have been eating, and we should be eating, nettle, spinach, broccoli, wild garlic, all these nutritious plants that now the expert doctors are telling us we haven't been eating and we should have been eating. We never did agriculture, and Huddersfield has got the landscape for looking beautiful with agriculture in it. Like Herefordshire's got all these vineyards and orchards, all these beautiful rural growing places, fields and fields, not just normal farmers' fields. It's all these lush, dense growth, which is what Huddersfield is like. Huddersfield has got this very charismatic landscape of forested hillsides with these platforms and chairs all looking over the town centre. It's almost like Lothlorien in The Lord of the Rings. It is actually like Lothlorien in The Lord of the Rings. It's like Rivendell. It is almost like the elves' place in The Lord of the Rings, and it should be like that, but it's actually been spoiled and ruined. That is what the shape of the area was. And there's nothing that's enhancing that and building on that and a homage to that or expressing that or even incorporating that into it at all. It's all square modern buildings, like the Borg. This health centre, well-being centre that they're planning with the university, it's all square. It's not a natural form or a natural shape. And actually, churches and cathedrals and the ancient monuments, the ancient cairns and long barrows all had channeling shapes to them, which actually enhance energy and healing and spirit. That's why churches are designed that way, because there's a real life effect of healing in those buildings. When you go in there, you feel the energy of the building and you feel the peace of the building. Not that new wellbeing centre is not playing on the design of that or using the ideas of the design of that into it. It's just like another Borg building. It's all Prince Andrew and Sir Patrick Stewart, these people, with the old Star Trek theme for our area. That Borg building by the university is blocked. It's obstructed the view of Castle Hill from the main roundabout and from Sainsbury's. A lot of the new buildings have obstructed the view. I don't think that the current administration want to have Castle View visible. I don't think they want us to see it and remember it and know what Huddersfield is. It is a huge long barrow. It's clearly obvious that it's a big long barrow farm, and so is Meltham Chap. Currently, the government are trying to take Stonehenge away from the public consciousness and build a tunnel underneath it, and then people won't see it anymore. Stonehenge is in the public consciousness because you see it when you drive past it. They're wanting to remove visual access to it and actually remove it from the public consciousness. And that, I think that's what they want to do with Castle Hill. People don't celebrate it for being a giant long barrow anymore or the Briganti stronghold. It's all about the Victoria Tower and the Jubilee. There is a strong Coronation Street vibe, and that's what the Imperial Chemical Industries did. It wrote off access to the river so you couldn't even get to and around access of that river area, which was at the entrance to Dalton, which is a historical area and landmark. There's something seriously wrong, and it is coming from Prince Andrew and the royals. And there's now Neil Oliver, you got David Icke, Russell Brand, the Anonymous channel have all got evidence that the elite the aristocracy of England own BlackRock and Vanguard, the massive investment companies, and they own everything. All those brands in the Kingsgate Centre, it doesn't matter which chocolate bar you buy, they own all of the chocolate bars, they're not in competition. It doesn't matter which cornflakes you buy, it doesn't matter what mobile phone you buy, all the companies, they own the shares in them all, and they're actually making... We're supposed to have a country that it takes taxes on everything that's sold, and it all goes towards the country, and a small part of that money goes to the monarchy, and all the rest goes for the running of the country. But that wasn't sufficient enough for the monarchy. They actually wanted to have all the equivalent of all of the money for the country for themselves, without putting it towards running the country. They wanted to be making as much money as what a country makes for their own ends. And that's what they're doing with BlackRock and Vanguard. They thought we should be making revenue on absolutely everything that's sold for us, not for running the country, but for running the world for us. And that's what they've done with BlackRock and Vanguard. And now those entities have got a turnover that is as big as most countries, but not to run a country with. They're using it, and they're actually controlling what happens through the influence of the businesses, through the adverts on buses, through football teams, through commercials, through the celebrities who work for them. When everyone's in employment and they're doing what a boss tells them to do at work, they're doing what these investors and shareholders are telling them to do. It's almost like you're getting paid when you're going to work to do what the company says, that's the principle and basis of the enterprise. Why is it called an enterprise, and why is a business called an enterprise? And they're all under the command of Picard. Now, that basically is, you've got Picard. This is a model, right? The model for the enterprise is Picard is in charge, everyone is under his command, they're getting paid to do what he says while they're at work, and he's in charge. And that's what these BlackRock and Vanguard are doing with the whole world now. Everyone goes into work and does what the commanding managers and directors and executives tell them to do. Now, we're told and led to believe that we've got a democracy and we can go and vote for what we want, and we can have a say in planning, and we can have a say in this and that, and we go to a surgery with his councillors and MPs and we ask them for what we want. But that's what they try and lead you to believe. But in fact, that's not the truth. They want you to vote for the franchise, get into the government, and once they're in, then they do what the franchise wants to do, which effectively is the corporation, the company. And as it turns out, there's not really that much difference between Labour and Conservative, because they're all being directed from behind the scenes. And the ministers and the lords, the aristocracy, have all got shares in these companies, and these companies are the ones who get the contracts for the local council on the highways and for the building, right? Now, they've got the contracts, they come up with the ideas for what they're going to build and what they're going to do with the highways, right? And it's very difficult for us to have a say in it or get votes when we're obstructed on the platforms. We can only get so much support on the platforms because they own the platforms and they're limiting how many messages you can send. It's very, very obstructive indeed. And I actually believe that it's actually, there are aspects of it that aren't lawful, because in the law, in the older laws, the principle of people who commission highways works or buildings on behalf of the council aren't supposed to have a business interest in it, or they've got to resign. And that was in the law, the principle of it. And what we've got is, we've got people who are in the government, in the House of Lords now, and they haven't got their own, tobacco business or this or that. They've actually got business investments and shares and interests in all of the corporate entities that are on the government contracts. Balfour Beatty, HS2, Taylor Wimpey, they're building houses and things. And the council are making the decisions on that. And the members of the same party, and they're telling their own councillors of the party which way to vote on it. So effectively, they've got profits and making money out of the business, and they're telling the councillors how to vote on it. And then they're coming up with forms like this that claim that we've got a say in it, but it's not actually really asking us for our say and opinion. It's actually just their questionnaire that they want us to fill in with their suggestions, their opinions, their questions and their answers. And then they'll use the data to what they want their ends. In fact, they can actually, by the way they formulate their questions about the town centre, they can actually manipulate this data, the numbers and figures, so it suits them either way. If they want to have this town centre built, if they want to get, if it comes up that less people will go into the town centre, then they'll just say, well, on the basis that less jobs are going to be in the town centre, this cultural quarter must be in the favour of the public because we're getting rid of idiots. Then if the numbers come in and say, oh, well, more people are going to come into the town centre, then they'll just say, oh, well, more people are going to come into the town centre, it's going to be more popular, so then that's a reason to do it. Whatever you fill in on their questionnaire, their answers, right, they'll use to formulate it into, so it's still going to make it, they're going to formulate it so it works for them in what they want to do. And you're not supposed to use influencer marketing if you are the council on people's decisions on things like planning or when you're doing a petition or things like that. Yet, these same investors and shareholders have got shares in the bus companies, they've got shares in the football team, and what the council are doing is they're actually doing collaborations and sponsorship, and they're on contract with the buses, and they're doing adverts on the buses like, this is, Huddersfield Town Football Club support, we're building a team, we've got the most awesome team. What they're actually doing is they're putting words on there that says we're building a team, we're building. So everywhere you look it says we're building. And it looks like, the football team support it, the bus company support it, the council are putting the adverts up all around town, making it look like, this is, everyone, this is, we're a team, we're united. And it's making it look like everyone supports it. So they'll go along with it. That's what you're not supposed to do. It is influencer marketing. And it's published and been printed and put up. And the companies that the parties own shares in and make profits out of the success of these projects. And in fact, they're likely making as much, if not more, out of having council contracts with Balfour Beatty and Taylor Wimpey and people who build the university, construction company, people who build the highways, construction company, HS2 construction company. They've got million and million pound contracts, multi-million pound contracts. They're probably making more out of HS2 and those projects that they approve than what they're making out of selling the chocolate bars, or close enough. And it is the House of Lords and the aristocracy who have got shares in and own and are directing a lot of these actions, when they're the ones who are voting on it in Parliament and they're not supposed to be. And they're telling the councillors from party headquarters how to vote on it locally when they're not supposed to be doing. And they're actually attacking individuals, because Extinction Rebellion have said that they've been attacked. I complained about the bus company because I'd got tinnitus and I didn't like the talking buses they brought in on Transdev. And I said that there was a picture in the yard which I didn't like, with like, it had sort of a black set of earphones and it had my initials on RK. Now, somebody wouldn't have thought anything about that. I complained about it, right? Why is it that after I complained about that, then after I'd done that, a few weeks after, or about a month after, Transdev took over and they did the sign writing on the buses with these really sinister characters on there with all these pictures next to their ears. Exactly. Next to their ears. Like the earphone sounds coming out. Exactly what I'd complained about before. And why is it that the 233 bus route gets turned from the 233 to the Darts, D1 Darts, Denby Darts, and it turns out that it's Earl Dartmouth that actually owns the land that they're trying to build some more houses on along that route. And it's who lives in this area and who's from this area. Well, the Brigantes are meant to be from this area. They got a picture of Jodie Whittaker on there from this area, but who are the people originally from this area? Were the Brigantes and were the Liberals, the Liberal stronghold, who's from this area, but not anymore because the Liberals were removed and actually defeated and they turned it into a Labour area. Now they're going, who's from this area now, all these labour workers, and now they're building more conservative houses and trying to turn it into a Tory area because they're trying to build more and more houses for Tory voters. That big D symbol, that housing estate on the Warriors' Tomb, which should have been recognised as an ancient Brigantes heritage site, but the war broke out when Valley started excavating, which disrupted it getting proper archaeology on it, and now it can't have proper archaeology on it because it's been built over, so you can't actually get access to archaeology on it. That's a D for Dartmouth as well. There's some really sinister things going on. I'm not the only person, right, who is saying it. I mean, you might say, oh, it's just me, mate, just me coming out with it, but I'm not, because people on the internet now are talking about it. Neil Oliver is saying it's not incompetence from the government. They're actually doing it on purpose. Professional broadcasters on mainstream news, Neil Oliver, Russell Brand, people like that are actually coming forward now, and they're saying that they believe the councils and parties are doing these things on purpose. They're targeting not only groups but people on purpose who are their opposition, and they actually do want to defeat these people. And the way you defeat them is by, you've got to make them socially fail, and then in their objections and planning and petitions, you've got to make them fail. And the only way to succeed in the petitions is through the platforms and through voting and getting signatures. But they're limiting how many messages you can send on the internet. They're limiting how many people you can speak to. And they're actually encouraging people to block and ban other people if they don't agree with their opinion. Which is, in a way, it's obstructing the political activities online. It's actually encouraging people to not come together politically. So you can't actually end up using those platforms. There are many, many groups, even when you get a community group who are trying to oppose a planning application. It's very difficult even if you get a lot of people in a group. People in Meltham have failed even when they had an entire community group trying to oppose houses. In Ireland, they've got, if they build over 400 or 500 houses, you can't stop it. They automatically get planning permission. Boom! It's like a bomb going off. Once it reaches critical mass, you can't stop it. And you have to actually have to petition for the council to intervene because they automatically get permission. They're trying to build houses next to some dolmens in Ireland, ancient heritage sites, and they're trying to put dolmens in shopping centres when it's meant to be a tomb, a dolmen, but they're trying to make the heritage and history of ancestors, instead of going to a quiet tomb and remembering your ancestors, they're trying to make it into shopping culture so it represents shopping. Ancient ancestors' tombs represent shopping instead of putting them in a cathedral in peace to rest or in the beautiful valley where it was built. They're trying to associate with shopping, shop till you drop, and revenue, which is going to all these lords. And it's the English aristocracy who are behind all the corporate developers in Ireland. They're very lucky with that Glendewy Dolmen because they've got the council behind them, and the council are actually opposing them actually building the housing development now, which they're very lucky. But our council has actually been helping the developers and wanting to actually remove visual access for our ancient sites and actually obstruct as history and heritage, This cultural centre, on the subject of the cultural centre specifically, because you need some surrounding history and context for our area, you have to have. I don't think that natural forms are being acknowledged. There's someone behind this town, the strategic development of it, and it is Prince Andrew and his affiliated peers, because Prince Andrew popped up and came forward with the university. And we've got Patrick Stewart. What does Patrick Stewart stand for? He is Starship Enterprise. That's what his symbology is. We know he is because that's what his role is. And what does the enterprise represent? All the business enterprises. That's what the word is, enterprise. And that's what they built the Kingsgate Centre. And it's not enough making revenue for the government for taxes. All those profits from the Kingsgate Centre were going specifically to the aristocracy, BlackRock and Vanguard. And they're using the money to actually control the whole, not just our area, but the whole world. And it's the people actually who traditionally have got the insight and knowledge to see what's going on, to identify what's going on, to understand what they're doing covertly, secretly, because all this information about their finances was hidden, is the liberal stronghold of England, what our area is famous for, an absolute liberal brick all the way through and through the Civil War, the opposition. That's what our area is. Now, what their pursuit and interest is there for is to beat the opposition. It is in the aristocracy's interest to defeat the opposition, but not only defeat them, but remove them, because there's nothing better for them than winning than actually removing them. And what they did is they didn't want a liberal stronghold of freedom to be there at Huddersfield, representing its pre-conquest heritage. They wanted to completely beat Ramsden and the Liberals, and they transformed it gradually into a servant-based area where we all work in factories under a command and under a factory master, and they built more and more factories, and they wanted us to be proud of it, and they sold us on the products, all the sweets and sugar things, which doctors like Dr. Ekberg and, Dr. Eric Berg, these professional doctors on YouTube are saying we shouldn't have been eating those foods. They've been slowly destroying and corroding his metabolism. They've been destroying his teeth. And even though people like them, they sold those products to us. We were sold on those products. They've not been good for us. And, we should have been growing more food. There are lots of amazing, tasty foods we could have been doing in agriculture and making the area look naturally beautiful, and beautiful plants which enhance all the surrounding landscape of Huddersfield, all those forested areas and the tiered platforms like Lothlorien, like in Lord of the Rings, and like that scenery. It would have looked beautiful with all those wild garlic growing and being cultivated and all these beautiful places. The air quality would have been amazing. You could have had some modern buildings mixed in. We could have had natural forms, a health and well-being centre that is a natural form and something that represents our heritage and fits into the landscape. Somewhere that channels positive energy in a health centre, like cathedrals create and channel spiritual energy. When you go in there, you feel at peace. You don't feel at peace when you're in a square borg building. It doesn't carry the energy, And I think these high tall buildings have been blocking off visual access to the good side of Castle Hill that actually shows its profile as a large long barrow, visual access is kind of forgotten, which is what they're trying to do to Stonehenge now by sending the cars underground through the tunnel so you don't see it when you pass it, There's nothing wrong with developing the town centre if it fits into the history of the place and think the culture of the place, but we need to know and recognise that there is evidence that Huddersfield, they wanted it for their own, and they wanted us to celebrate the conquering group, which, I'm not saying the whole country doesn't celebrate the conquering group, like Coronation Street itself is about the coronation, but our area has got some ancient sites and a landscape that it's something more than that. It goes back further. It goes back further in time, it goes back further in history, and it has got something of a previous people in culture that stands for not just the last 2,000 years, since, the birth of Christ. We go back 5,000-10,000 years worth of people who we are the evolutionary, culture of this country. We're something that is more than only the last, 2,000 years, and the most of that time, there has been, there hasn't just been, we've had the Civil War, the War of the Roses, we've had, we've had Cromwell in, and then there was the Arthurian period when we, had Anglo-Saxon separate kings and rulers. So, out of all of history, there's only been a small section of history where we've had the current ruling authorities in power, mainly since 1066, which is 1066. So if you take 1066 off the last 2,000 years, it's not even 1,000 years. Huddersfield has got a history and meaning and symbology that is much more than the last, 800 or 900 years. And we're not remembering that. We're not wanting to learn about it and acknowledge it and understand it. We're not wanting to build our buildings around it and fit into it. We only seem to be wanting to build a Victoria Tower, and square buildings that highly resemble and seem to symbolise that Borg building. Seeing that Patrick Stewart was the university representative, and it is a Borg building. And then the big main university building is like the Warrior's Tomb flipped upside down, put us at the bottom. And then, all the Liberal stronghold, the majority of them have been removed and pulled out, including the pub at Castle Hill, which is a Liberal stronghold, a free house, a public house, and now you've got to pay to go in that tower. There is evidence. This is not based on nothing. I've looked through the history and I've pointed things out. What happened to that Warrior's Tomb with that letter D-shaped street on it? It's not from nowhere. I've got evidence that correlates with it. Castle Hill. It's a giant long barrow. Why isn't there a Victoria Tower on made in Castle or Oswestry Hill Fort? They put it on ours. Why is visual access being removed from the Freemasons' Arms? But yet they put the football club manager Gargoyle Mansion looking over Castle Hill. They didn't build a picnic site looking at one of the most amazing views. They put a quarry there which looks horrible. Why? I think there's evidence that someone behind the scenes has been closing visual access, which closes the memory of knowing what the place is about, seeing that, getting access to the places where you can survey it and understand it and look at it properly, because they so wanted to take it for themselves. They wanted to take it for themselves with the ICI, Imperial Chemical Industries. They blocked off access to that river junction at the entrance of Dalton, which is a major gateway to that Warrior's Tomb Hill Fort. They concreted that river and blocked it off with the Imperial Chemical Industries. You've got King George there signing the certificate. Then you've got all these architects popping up and the Huddersfield University representatives who are behind these people. I think there are BlackRock and Vanguard connections, like with the Kingsgate Centre, and the money and all the decisions is being controlled and manipulated. And I think there's some intervention in the communication in there, I don't think half of these comments and videos that we're sending in, I don't think there's anybody going to... We're lucky if they get listened to. We've won recently at Oswestry because with Old Oswestry Hill Fort, the Council of British Archaeology stepped in, but they claim they didn't even know anything about Castle Hill. And then when you get a petition, there's always excuses like Bernard McGuinn says, oh no, we've already made a decision on it, when it's got its own proceedings. Not planning applications for Castle Hill proceedings. When you're doing a petition for Castle Hill, it's got its own proceedings. There's only limited time for certain evidence to be given in other proceedings. It's not an entire case for the other subject. It's a different subject where evidence can be heard. That's why I want to get the area protected with an area of outstanding natural beauty. So we can know that our area is beautiful, And everyone talks about our area being beautiful, and then we really understand and believe it's beautiful, and we act to protect it being beautiful and enhance its beauty, rather than all these people putting security gates up and pubs and things like that. And all these Borg buildings, what is the symbol of the Borg building is to be assimilated. In the film, the Borg represents and stands being assimilated, right? Now, that's what the meaning of it is. It is associated with Patrick Stewart. He was the head of the university representative, and he is from Huddersfield. And what that symbolises and means, if you think about it, is it's like what Elon Musk's doing, who is one of the major players globally now. He wants to invent and implement the neural network, which is the neural link for mind-machine interaction and control. That is what the Borg were about. What's Mark Zuckerberg doing? He wants everyone to have meta goggles, Ray-Bans, and go into the metaverse, the meta-universe, and have his own world projected on them and then not see the world around them as much, which is what's happening with visual access being blocked off from all the places around us. Mark Zuckerberg, the major world player, and Elon Musk, their main two projects, which they're pursuing, they're both aligned with what the model of the Borg is, which is to be assimilated into part-man, part-machine control from a central source. But yet, the Starship Enterprise claims that those are the bad guys. Oh no, the Starship Enterprise is not the Borg, but yet, it turns out that that's what building the build there, what represents that. Not only the media centre that Barry Sheeran's in, and the university, now the Health and Wellbeing Centre, which has got the top lopped off it, like some sort of clear crystal top, which means we've got half the top of his head's missing. And it's not the shape of a natural form, like the Sage Centre in Gateshead, which is a nice round natural form. It doesn't play on the natural surrounding tiered-shaped platforms or the forest landscape. It's not shaped like a cathedral or a court-shaped cairn or long barrow, which Castle Hill which channels energy and healing energy, where you could go inside it and it would actually make you feel better and positive, like when you're in a church. And it's absolute, you can feel it as soon as you're in a cathedral, you can feel the power and energy. Those spiritual centres are meant to be, that's what a health and well-being centre should be, but this is out of the architects don't consider this, architects don't think about this. I don't think that they're up to the standard or level to even conceive of that. And to think, BlackRock and Vanguard, and the Borg, and what does Huddersfield represent? We don't really want to be doing any more Borg buildings. What is Huddersfield? What is Castle Hill's history? It is a massive long barrow form. What are long barrow forms? Elongations, bridge shapes, which is like cathedrals are inside. It channels energy. I just don't think they're anywhere close to the concept, the scientific understanding and principles of many fields of education and study, which is what universities are supposed to represent. There is a gesture towards that in the Huddersfield University building, but they've flipped it upside down and they've sort of twisted it into, it looks like more of a command centre than it does a spiritual long barrow. It looks like more of a command centre when the roots in ancient history of Huddersfield are smaller at the bottom and then it grows up to the top, wider. So we haven't got actually really, really strong roots and foundations, I don't think. And then not just 2 Borg buildings, but more. And it's kind of too late now. We've got a few heritage buildings left in the town centre, but we should have many more. There should have been loads. You could have built lots of modern buildings without sacrificing those. They could have been modern inside. There are lots of pretty towns around England and cities that are really modern, really up to date. They've got modern buildings around the town. Why do we have to sacrifice those old, beautiful, pretty pubs with the heritage when you walk around and you remember, when you walk around Huddersfield, you see it. That's the pub. That's the ancient old pub where the Liberals used to meet, where the Roundheads used to meet. I don't think Prince Andrew and those people behind the scenes want Huddersfield people to walk around the town and see those pubs and in their minds remember and think of the Roundheads, remember and think of the Brigantes, remember and think of, when Cromwell defeated the Royalists. They want everyone to see the Jubilee Tower, salute, sing the anthem. They want everyone to go into the Borg buildings, be assimilated into their education system and do as they're told. And the track record is they've been getting us to buy their mobile phones, buy their technology, buy their Ray-Ban goggles and metaverse things, buy their food and sweets and tuck into the KFC and McDonald's, which Dr. Eric Berg and Dr. Ekberg, major world-class professional doctors, are saying it is bad. It's been hacking away at his metabolism all these years and actually making people go diabetic and turn diabetic gradually. It's not been good, but this elite force has been making massive amounts of money off us, like through the Kingsgate Centre. They haven't been concerned about his well-being. They've been concerned about money and profits and the ability to influence through their companies, through their paid employment that everyone is under, following their starship commands, effectively doing their bidding and not having the tools or the proper survey form in front of you. This is their questions, their answers on these forms, tick their boxes, not submit your verbal statement, your idea of what the town centre should be like, your assessment of what's been going on, how we got into this situation, what the current town centre means symbolically, what the new plans mean, what they're designing and what it will mean and what it will put into people's heads and who they understand we are and what our area represents and stands for. I think that there has been a bad influence in health, a bad influence in education, and a bad influence in building and planning. And I think it's out of jealousy of our area. It's out of the fact that this was an actual mighty people, a strong area that actually were kind and caring, not conquering. We didn't go, and conquer that many other places, really, until after 1066 when they sent all the ships out everywhere, I actually truly believe that these people are kind. There's a kindness, there's a caring, and there is a love in these people, but when you get badgered and annoyed, and when you get your history and heritage taken away, what's happening? There should be no stealing or thefts in Huddersfield. There should be no differentiation in rich and poor. That was made because they built the factories, the working class factories, following the Industrial Revolution, and they built us into us. They transformed a liberal free area into a working class. And they said these are the reasons for it, because we want all these fancy products, which have caused a lot of the waste and a lot of the pollution and a lot of the health problems. Well, they promised agriculture at every stage. And then to get, like, for example, that street on the Warriors Mound, it's clearly evident when you look at the records what happened. It was liberal. It was liberal bricks. Suddenly, flipped over to Labour, and then they built it, and then they flipped back again. It was an excuse to do it. There's someone behind the scenes who is arranging these events, and it's not conspiracy theory, it's not, paranoia or anything like that. Professional broadcasters on mainstream television, Neil Oliver, Russell Brand, they've got, 5 million, 10 million people watching and following these channels that are professional broadcasters. It's coming into the consciousness now when you've got Anonymous publishing videos that explain what's happening with all the products, who owns all the different brands, where the money's going, who's been pulling the strings and the influencer marketing behind the scenes of it. And they've given evidence that it is the aristocracy who are behind it. And they've been making all the money, and that's why we've got the Kingsgate Centre and the university. They get Patrick Stewart, to advocate it, and then Prince Andrew pops up. But then Prince Andrew ends up getting, prosecuted by the Americans, for this offence or whatever. So, I wouldn't mind, but we don't seem to be having any options. Why do they always come out with one design? Why don't the architects come out with, if they're coming out with these square borg buildings, right? Why don't they come out with these square borg buildings for one option, and then the next option is a nice, beautiful, biological shape or a natural form that reflects the surrounding forests and landscapes and fits into the shape of it, or is some functional building with actual real energies. Do some real university work and study it. Get some real education behind you. Study these forms, study the cathedrals and the energy of them, and build a health and wellbeing centre that actually has a functional operation, which is what Castle Hill does, and what the Longbarrows actually do. They carry an energy, and it's actually all proved. It's not, it's not pseudoscience. The actual real science is behind the elongated buildings that channel the energy, which is what the churches are based on. The cathedral is actually based on it. That's why all the churches and cathedrals are that shape. Really the churches and cathedrals aren't just spiritual. They're meant to, it is well-being, spiritual well-being and health, Why? It's this kind of Borg shape, this assimilated. When you go into a lot of offices, there's the hum of the lights and the hum of the computer. It just feels artificial, When every cathedral that I've been into has definitely got a very peaceful and spiritual atmosphere. And if it's really hot outside, it's very cooling. And you can actually think clearly and in peace. You haven't got the radio on there selling your products all the time, with the radio presenters more influencer material. When you go into the doctors now, it's just the radio selling you more products and getting you to listen to more celebrities. The BBC celebrities, when you go to the health centre in Skelmanthorpe, and the health centre in Kirkburton, it's Radio 2 on all the time, which is, listen to our advocates, watch, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, watch this at 9 o'clock, watch that, buy this, buy that. They're telling you all these things, and that's the influence on you all the time, A health and wellbeing centre should be surely to get away to some peace and recovery, not planes flying over your house all the time, really low and really noisy, and then they cancel the buses and then they divert the traffic past your house from Leeds Road. At the same time, there's they put security gates all around the town centre that raise up and down, and security guards everywhere, and then your local pub that you really love and like to go past, which is something you like. One of my enjoyments in life is looking at that pub, and then it's stolen and taken away because they put a big security gate on there. And then when you try and say something about it, people from the village, who go in there drinking are just coming out with yob comments and just not, they just don't understand and don't care, It's all they're bothered about is going in there and getting drunk. We want to go into that pub, we want to get drunk, and we want to, eat loads of pies and kids run around. But what does it mean when there's a big black gate on the beautiful part of the pub, which obstructs the view of the pub and the appearance of the pub? What does it say? What does it speak to you? Oh, yeah, we're concerned about safety. But why? Because the only thing it's saying is this village is not safe. We need this gate. We don't trust the people in this village. That's why there's a big black gate on there. It's saying that the people aren't trustworthy and the people aren't safe. And when everyone starts thinking that, it passes on, and then everyone wants gates. That's what's happening in the town centre at the moment. With McDonald's, they've got a security guard in there. At Barham Arcade, they've got a security guard in there. Then you've got bollards coming up and down when you go into the bus centre. Smoking is against the law. Obey the law. Walking on the bus carriageway is against the law. When you are... Oh, I'm not a criminal. I'm not unsafe. Why is he saying that to me? It's this constant accusation of being criminal, and that's what they've got in the bus centres, and they've got these sinister characters on the D1 darts bus. It's called darts flying around. Then you've got, it's definitely connected to Earl Dartsmouth. He's building the houses and on the land across the route. If you're telling me that Earl Dartsmouth has got nothing to do with that bus route when it goes straight past the plot of land that he owns, through the plot of land that he owns, and his D's for Dartsmouth, and it's called Darts, who are the people on this bus company? They've actually joined sinister characters on there that make the locals look sinister. No wonder people are wanting to put security gates up on there. This is psychology. The evidence that I am giving is the highest quality. I don't need a university degree. I am qualified through birth to interpret and understand what is happening in this town and village to a high level. I exceed the professors in the university in my observations of what is happening in this town. Our town is actually being hijacked and the local people are being undermined because of our history and who we are. If we actually are a people of love and care and sharing, we are. And that's what I can remember it. But now, on the internet, what are the options you see? Block, 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 ban, ban, ban. But why do you need to? Because everyone else is seeing the options and wanting to use them. Other people are seeing all these things that are happening. More security gates going up, more security guards around. Then they're seeing the sinister pictures on the buses. This is influencer marketing. This is what they're using. And then we've got these square buildings that are not peaceful and natural forms. Why can't we walk along the river? There are only small sections of canal that you can walk on. We should be able to walk the entire length of the Colne and the Calder, you know. All of town could have beautiful walks around it, you know. And then those platform tiers could all be beautiful places where you could go and look upon town from. There's something seriously gone wrong. And I'm not blaming it on the people. I don't blame it on them. I just don't think they're aware. And some of them actually don't care. And all they can say is, oh, you're talking a lot of rubbish, because they don't understand and they're too focused on what the celebrities are telling them on TV, what they want to be eating from the local pie shop and the next pint they get down them. They're only interested, their pursuit is to get to the pub and get intoxicated. Now, once you get to the pub and get intoxicated, you're not in a state to fully evaluate what's going on or understand what's going on. That's the problem, you know. Well, I'm all for education in universities. I'm all for education in town. But I don't think that it's been done to a competent level. You've got to be interested in and know all these things. And like I said, I am not the only person saying it. There are legitimate broadcasters now, like Neil Oliver, who's well respected. You know, they're getting millions of viewers and millions of comments, and they're coming to the same conclusions. Russell Brand is coming to the same conclusions. He's got millions of people who watch his channel. Even David Icke, who's a little bit more far out, though, but, you know, Neil Oliver's starting with political parties like the Reclaim Party. There are actual legitimate parties that are coming to the same conclusions now, you know? And they're starting to agree and ask the same questions that I'm asking and come up with the same answers that I'm coming up with. Legitimate political parties like the Reclaim Party, you know? So we need a town centre that acknowledges, firstly, the surrounding shape of the landscape and goes with it, fits into it. The shape of the Long Barrows is the natural form of where they're shaped out of the natural elements and forces. They go with the natural forces of the environment. And that's what being healthy is all about. We need oxygen and you know, plant. We need to eat greens to live, which is the best diet. When your environment surrounds yourself with what you should be eating and it looks beautiful and pretty and you like looking at it, you feel good about yourself and you feel happy. You know, when there's people, certain people haven't got more than other people, you don't need to steal anything from them. So you don't need to be concerned about security and thefts. You don't need to worry about that. You know, and you not spend money on that. When people have got spare money, they're not wasting it on A, too much food, and B, security gates and things we shouldn't need. They've got more time and resources and more interest in actually what is going on politically and what we should be doing. And I don't think that entity, that force behind the government wants people to have money available to engage, you know, with that political power. They want to just let them take care of it, vote for your party and let the party make the decisions and us just go along with it. Let the satellite guided bus take you where you're going. You're not steering or controlling it. You're not enjoying, you know, being in control of it and going where you want to, exactly where you want to go, at exactly what time, for cheap fuel or renewable energy, or even people sharing lifts, people sharing rides, people stopping and giving each other lifts. That is the fruition of love, care and sharing. They've never promoted that. There's not been money in it for them. You know, we shouldn't even need taxis and they shouldn't need that many buses. You only need buses on the main road between towns and between cities. You don't really need any other buses going up small areas. If there were more minibuses which you could call and ring up, which weren't as expensive as taxis and people could share and get in other ones and stop them, call them over, it would fit in much more conveniently and you wouldn't need all these bus lanes and bus gates and things like that. It's being run and operated for profit. And that's how this BlackRock and Vanguard have got into the position they're in. This is relevant to this planning of this town centre because it's about, in order to know where you are and what you should be doing, you need to know the facts and circumstances that surround the area and the forces that are at play, the players who are at play, the people who are influencing it and who's making money out of it and where's the money coming from and what people should be learning and need to know. You know, it's not all just about sewing in the university or crafts, you know. People should know about the energy of buildings and the channeling of buildings. There's an entire field of knowledge on that because who designs the churches and builds them, the architects, they do know about it. They might not talk openly about it, but there is a science to it. Why aren't our health and well-being centre fitting with something that's, you know, a natural form in the environment and something that's physically an embodiment of well-being and healing, not a Borg cube, you know? It just, and visual access to our surrounding area. When you're in Huddersfield, you need to know what Huddersfield is and where it is, which is why it's important to have the visual access to your surrounding area, you know? I think that the loss of a lot of the buildings, it's probably not all to do with that liberal history, but a major part of it is. Because it's true that if you don't have those buildings there and the records that are inside those buildings and the pictures that are inside those buildings, then they're not in your mind, they're not in your memory, and they're not in the physical memory of the town anymore. It is kind of like pulling teeth out. It's almost like pulling your natural teeth out and putting you know, new metal ones in or false or fake ones. For you know, you might say, well, you know, we're not going all the way back to, you know, wooden huts or whatever, but that's not the point. Huddersfield didn't take a certain side for no reason at all. There was a reason. What was the reason why we sided with the Liberals, with the Roundheads? Why? Because this area represents the previous people from before. It represents that the Roundheads is about round stone circles in ancient sites and cultures of the people, the original previous people of the island before the conquest. So that's why our area sided with the Liberals. It sided with the Liberals because our sites that we have are of that culture and are of those people's sites, and we were proud of it. That's the reason why we took that side. We didn't just take it for no reason at all. And they were trying to scam loads of money out of us for shipping tax. There was this shipping tax that was going around. They were trying to, nobody wanted to pay it. So, that's one of the elements that led into it. It comes down to taxes again. And what the problem is now is the Kingsgate Centre got built mainly to raise money, not only for taxes, but for this BlackRock Vanguard group that the aristocracy own. They wanted to be making their own revenue for their own worldwide pseudo-corporate government, and then they wanted to, have the influence and control, which is, it's not liberty. The Borg buildings don't represent liberty. Rubik's Cubes don't represent liberty. A Rubik's Cube represents fixed colours on a cube that you can only turn them where the cube says, and you've got to solve the puzzle. It's not freedom, right? And those square Borg buildings don't represent freedom. They represent a neural net control, like a mechanical one as well, not even a natural one. It's not even about natural authority or natural control in nature. It's about electronic intervention and overriding. It's about broadcasting from one central place. Not everyone having a fair share of power themselves. That's liberty. Liberty is each person having a fair vote. Each person's mind being free to make its own decisions and have its own say into the community equally. So we come to decisions that we've all voted on, not corporate council companies deciding what it is, and because they've got the power to, coming up with forms like this that are limited. This form here, this survey form represents the Borg and the Rubik's Cube that you can only turn what it says. They decide what questions they're going to put, and they decide what answers you can put. Right? Maybe later on in this form there'll be a small part where you can put the words in, but they sell this form as have your say. This form is going to be sold to you as have your say, right? But when you open the form, the first thing that comes up is, these are our questions that we want you to answer, and they're going to be a statistic. And then half of the form's hidden, half of the answers in the form are hidden, particularly on a mobile phone. When you go into the development page on the website, the form doesn't appear unless you specifically know the exact link for it that, like, the councillors put on, or the Huddersfield Hub posts on certain groups. If you're looking for it on the website, you can't find it. That's strategic planning against you. It's strategically set up against you. And then psychologically, you try and motivate people. Come on, let's get motivated to oppose this council, sign a petition. They've already been beaten in the local housing development that beat them, like at Meltham. Even though they had a community group, they got defeated. Then they hear the beep, beep, beeping sound from the building site when they're building. It's almost like the seatbelt noise. Put your seatbelt on, obey the command, right? So it reinforces defeat by the workmen having these beep, beep, beep sounds, which is if you're at home all day, it drives you insane. Right? With the beep, beep, beep sound. It's almost like on Star Wars when they've got that guy with the two little beeping, flashing things at the side of his neck, right? It's all strategic. Then you've got the little sinister characters on the bus making you feel uneasy, and the talking bus. Next stop, next stop, next stop, next stop. Oh, right, you're going past all the stops. So that's what's happening with the building. Meltham, no, next stop, next stop, next stop. Gone, 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 gone. You didn't stop any of those building developments hardly. That's what the talking bus is getting people to think on the talking bus. It's getting people to think that. And also when you're shopping as well. Oh, maybe I shouldn't put that in the shopping basket, I'll stop. Maybe I shouldn't put that in the shopping basket, I'll stop. Maybe I shouldn't pick that up in the shopping basket, I'll stop, right? Pint of milk, pint of milk, pint of milk. Small little loaf of bread, more pies, right? Next stop. But unless you sat on the bus, you're going past the stops, yeah? So you're not actually acting. I'm not acting. So it's like, your mind is not actually engaging to actually physically stop. Don't pick that up.
It's all psychology. If you want to get into some serious psychology, then, we'll do that. If you want to go to the University of Huddersfield and do some serious psychology, we'll do the serious psychology, right? They're teaching people these things about marketing. They're teaching these people about things in psychology, but they're actually using it. They're not actually using it to help us for his own benefit. They're using it for the profits of the big businesses. They're using it for their own advantage and essentially for money. Now, there are people out there who are giving some good advice. There are some people who are trying to change things for the better and for the good of health, and like the Green Party, people aren't voting for them because they're being told what to do and cued by the celebrities. And then the council are coming up with these ideas. Other people haven't got any better ideas. They just go along with it. Don't intervene, next stop, forget that, next stop, forget that, next stop, forget that. That's what the strategy is, And liberty and freedom is about people having an actual say, not just filling a survey form in. It's actually about properly, deeply engaging and having a proper say and submitting it. That's what it's about. And I just don't think that these square, Borg-like future buildings are good for Huddersfield. They're not good for what it means. They're not good for health. Look at the Sage Centre in Newcastle. Gates said, it's called Sage. Sage is a plant. That's a natural form. It's a round building, There aren't any buildings like that being suggested in Huddersfield, And there are lots of people who like old-fashioned towns and old-fashioned parts of towns, cultural quarters that are very pretty, like Victorian style, and old cottages. When people maintain them and they look nice, people do like them. But the big sell on television hasn't actually been pushing for that. A lot of people are influenced because it's just cool, fashion, What the television sells people, they have all want. Have the latest bit. We can get you to wear these baseball hats. We can get you to want these trainers. We can get you to want these houses. But it's because the television has put it on them and pushed it on them, They're not encouraging people to try and protect things. There are amazing, beautiful places that you don't need that are big or huge. But the influencer, it's not going that way. And that's part of it. The Liberals, he's supposed to succumb to the influence of just one big central authority. It's about everyone. But they're trying to pretend that we've got a democracy, the same we've got equal votes, the same we can have a say. But what actually happens is you can't find the form. When you do eventually find it, it's got their questions with their answers that you can choose from. And then you can't even see all the parts on the form. So this is my representation, and it is relevant to that building. There are much better ideas that you can have, natural forms and shapes that are more conducive to health and well-being for the Health and Wellbeing Centre and for the town centre itself that needs to retain visual access to Castle Hill. And we need to protect all the cultural quarter. We've lost a lot of the old buildings, we probably won't get those back now, but that doesn't just mean that, you just might as well carry on writing it off.